Welcome back to Retail's Most Wanted. Our guest today is Dustin Greene. With a background in SWAT, investigations, and military intelligence, he now works complex, organized retail crime cases that cross jurisdictions and require more than just good instincts. They require structure, discipline, and strategy. Retail's Most Wanted is brought to you in partnership with LVT, securing physical environments through intelligent automation. Learn more at lvt.com. That's lvt.com. Dustin, we're glad to have you on Retail's Most Wanted. Can't wait to talk to you about all this.
Thanks for having me, Marty.
All right, well, let's start by just sort of setting the frame here. We'll start simple. When people hear the term organized retail crime, what do they usually get wrong, in your opinion?
So I think they get two things wrong. The first is I think people focus mostly on the visible portion of organized retail crime, right? The boosters in the store, the shoplifters, and they really miss that there's a multi-layered criminal network that's often below the surface, from fencing and resale. And the second part, I think, that's really near and dear to my heart is that it's a victimless crime, that these big box retailers, that they can afford to lose this product. But what you're missing is that you're missing the employees that are making an honest wage, and you're missing the customers who are trying to have a good shopping experience. And so I think from a high level, those are two things that most people misunderstand.
So without getting into anything sensitive, how do these groups typically operate? What does the pipeline look from theft to resale?
Yeah, so a 30,000 foot view would be they run like a business. Like any business, they're going to target product that's in high demand that they can resell quickly, and then they move through different resale channels. So through social media, flea markets, different types of fencing operations. There's defined roles from the boosters and shoplifters in the store to the people who store the product and then move and then resell it. So it's an enterprise.
I want to talk a little bit about the role of intelligence. You've got a background in intelligence analysis. How does that skill set translate into dealing with retail crime investigations?
Yeah, so it's you in the Army, we looked at a lot of not isolated incidents, but patterns, right? And taking patterns and data and turning it into an actionable product, right? So in organized retail crime, you're not looking at single theft incidents. You're building out people, vehicles, locations, their methods or their modus operandi or their MO, and now you're trying to identify that across a series of events. And so you're shifting from a theft incident to a crime series that may span multiple jurisdictions. And so through that, you pull that raw data, and now you're delivering actionable, estimations on what time do they like to hit, what day of the week, what products are they targeting, right? So then we can effectively collaborate, but also put in some countermeasures to kind of curb that.
And even that, I'm guessing, is dealing with sort of the tip of the iceberg, right? If you're following along and trying to track the people who are actually committing the crimes, who are going into the stores, that's one level, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's that surface level, right? That you're actually trying to follow them back to where the product's going, who's running sort of the larger organization. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So you're using that data, and then that's where collaboration with law enforcement comes in. As I work for a retailer now, and I was a detective in the past, so now you're really you're layering your data, right? And so you're laying your evidence and your data to really, not just take the quick, low-hanging fruit, right? But now you want to pull the weed from the root, and so you're going to identify that ultimately as far down as you can go, that criminal network, and really dismantle that.
You're part of a rapid deployment team. Tell me a little bit about what that is, what that means, and when you get called in, what does that usually mean about the scale or complexity of a case?
Yeah, so I work for a major retailer, and a part of that rapid deployment team is a national level response to incidents that, for various reasons, whether it's the total case value is out of control, the number of incidents, maybe there's violence in those incidents, but just to get some perspective, so retailers have investigators who have wide regions that they're responsible for, sometimes many states. And so what I come in is I support the investigator in that region, bringing my knowledge, skills, and abilities to kind of help them focus the investigation, but also coordinate with law enforcement to collaborate and ultimately disrupt whatever criminal network we're dealing with.
Organized retail crime sort of works across boundaries. They don't respect city or state lines. I'm interested in what you think about where do investigations tend to break down, and how do you keep cases moving across jurisdictions?
Yeah, that's really hard. I think about it like an Olympic relay race, right? You could sprint out the gates as a retailer, have a great case, and if you don't have a good handoff, you're going to drop that baton, and the case is going to break down. And so there's many challenges from a retailer side of view. When it crosses state lines, sometimes it's just the knowledge of whose jurisdiction is this, who can take over this case, and who can I partner with. And from a law enforcement perspective, when I was a detective, it was you're not getting you may be getting information from one retailer, but nobody's talking, so you find out that someone may be impacting multiple retailers, but you're only getting a small portion of the information. And so really, none of these crimes can be solved without collaboration, and not just information sharing, but timely information sharing.
Solving a crime has got to be a big enough challenge on its own, but I imagine that these groups who are involved in organized retail crime, they sort of count on that difficulty of handing a case off from one jurisdiction to another, and they know that sort of any hesitation on or any interruption there is just a big advantage to them. Is that an accurate way of thinking about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we deal with traveling crews, and that's kind of what we see, right? They go to an area for multiple days and they target whatever they're going to target, but then they're moving on. And unless there's an identification and information shared, they're just moved to the next location. And it kind of goes back to the intelligence. It looks like an isolated incident, and you're not seeing that at a broader level.
I'm interested then in how you build cases that stick. I mean, it's one thing to identify suspects. It's another to take it all the way to the point of prosecution. What separates a case that goes nowhere from one that leads to real accountability?
Yeah. Identification of a case isn't enough, right? But you got to show pattern, intent, and organization within the case that you're building, right? You're showing that, hey, this isn't just theft, right? This is coordinated. So people are going in, they're in the store for less than a minute, and they're selecting items irregardless for price, size, and it's not consistent with patterns of normal shopping, right? And then from there, you got to have clear evidence. So from a retail side, that's your surveillance cameras, and then from a law enforcement side, it's layering your evidence. And so you have surveillance video, you have maybe cell phone data, you have license plate reader information, and so on and so forth. And so you're really layering this network out for the DA's office, wherever your jurisdiction is, and really not leaving it up to the imagination of what's occurring. You've built out this executive summary of this criminal enterprise.
So in all of this, you have to work, I imagine, very closely with local, state, and federal agencies, and probably retailers as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so it's sharing that information in a timely manner. And we really have improved. So when I became a detective, we didn't have a lot of the information that we have now. It was in 2019, and we didn't share information as easily as we do now, but there's been some major advancements in that, which has really helped build stronger cases.
One of the things I've heard as long as we've been doing this podcast is that there are always new trends in organized retail crime, that the criminals tend to get out a couple of steps ahead of law enforcement, then law enforcement catches up, and they're sort of always in this chase. What are you seeing right now that concerns you the most? Are there new tactics or technologies or patterns that retailers should be paying attention to?
Yeah, so emerging trends, I mean, you just said it, Marty, that they're always adapting and one step ahead. I've seen the faster resale cycles. So they're using different platforms to sell these items as quickly as possible, and then they're just disappearing. And social media is one of those places where they'll have a live sale and then they just disappear and the product is gone, and very difficult to find after that. And so that's one of the things that really has evolved. But also you have your refund fraud and your gift card scams, and those get very nuanced, and I think oftentimes we miss that because there's so many layers of data.
I want to shift to some advice for retail leaders. For executives or asset protection teams who are listening to this, what's the one thing they should be doing differently right now?
So what I think we need to do is I think we need to not only focus on improving our technology, but I think we need to remember that we are not only competing with other retailers in the retail space, but we are competing with law enforcement for their attention. And so that means that surveillance cameras that actually show high resolution quality images of our suspects are really important. And so when we're investing in technology, just remember that technology often is used for law enforcement to prioritize cases and effective prosecution.
Dustin Greene, thank you so much for your work fighting back against organized retail crime, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, some takeaways. Organized retail crime thrives on gaps between jurisdictions, between data sets, between teams. Closing those gaps takes more than enforcement. It takes coordination, intelligence, and people who know how to connect the dots. That's it for this episode of Retail's Most Wanted. Thanks to our presenting sponsor, LVT. Don't forget to hit that subscribe or follow button so you can catch each new episode. We drop a new one every 2 weeks. We're also on X, we're on LinkedIn, and we're on YouTube. You can follow us along there or give us a comment or a suggestion for a topic you'd like to see on a future show. Thanks so much for being with us, everyone. And as always, keep up the good fight.